Please. In the morning.
There's too much jubilation to do an overwrought intro. Let's just get right into the thick of things. Oh, quickly, that's Alison, that's Brian, I'm Max. So, Count Dankula is not going to jail. Woohoo! Instead, he will receive an 800-euro fine, which is roughly $1,100. Upon leaving the courtroom, Meacham and his girlfriend were met with cheers of adoration. I would have done the same if I happened to live in Scotland. Meacham planned to appeal against his conviction over concerns that set a legal precedent, but the judge denied it. In response to this, Meacham said the following: "A really dangerous precedent has been set for people to say things, or context to be completely ignored, and then they can't be convicted for it." There were also some other things that he said to a certain reporter after he left the courtroom, but we'll discuss that in just a few minutes. Today, in response to this legal controversy, a political group by the name of Liberalist UK, formed by a friend of HoneyBadgerRadio, Sargon of Akkad, helped to organize a march from Leicester Square, I believe that's how you pronounce it, Leicester Square, to Downing Street. The march had hundreds of attendees, almost all had symbolic tape over their mouths. Upon reaching Downing Street, the aforementioned Sargon gave a speech, and here's an excerpt from the end. Quote, "Ethnic jokes serve one purpose: to diffuse ethnic tensions by normalizing the differences between ethnicities. If we are not free to offend one another, we are not free to make the kind of ethnic jokes that strengthen the social fabric of this country. Without the freedom to offend, we create a series of armed camps, each watching the other for any signs of transgression, both obsessed with defending the honor of their respective tribe. This can only divide a country by setting us apart from one another and making us strangers to our neighbors. We need the banter to keep ourselves grounded and maintain this united kingdom. Unless we scrap all laws prohibiting insult and giving them offense, the problems we are facing will only get worse. Free Count Dankula, thank you." And finally, just before I pass this off to my two fellow co-panelists, a little bit of news that just came to my attention right before we recorded. I'm 99% sure, based on a tweet that Count Dankula just sent out, that after the ruling was given in the courtroom, he turned to everybody that was sitting behind him and dabbed.
He dabbed!
He dabbed! Okay, Brian, Alison, express your jubilation.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a cautious jubilation because he shouldn't have received anything, and he shouldn't have received a conviction. This entire situation is a total farce. And I just wanted to address what Sargon had to say because I think he has some real wisdom there. When populations of people lose their sense of humor about themselves, that's when violence starts. It's not when people can take ribbings about our differences and the things that we enjoy. As I've said before in the past, possibly some of the most innocuous stereotypes are the food stereotypes. Like I would, as a white person, I would love to have I do maple syrup, Canadian. But you know, those are some of the most innocuous. And like Sargon is saying, once we start to lose our sense of humor about ourselves, that's when bad things start happening. We all need to maintain a sense of humor about ourselves, and every community needs to maintain a sense of humor about itself. These kinds of jokes don't cause violence, they stop violence. And the fact of the matter remains, Dankula's joke was making something adorable do something horrific. The joke doesn't work unless there's an adorable pug and a horrific statement. It doesn't work unless there's a recognition of the horror of what the pug is doing. So by definition, it requires maintaining that sense of horror over the Holocaust, over what happened to Jewish people. It requires it for the joke to even work. And once we lose that, to be honest, I wonder about what's really going on when people start trying to stop these kinds of jokes. Because when you try to stop these kinds of jokes, you're actually eroding that line of horror. When these jokes maintain that horror because they don't work without it. So when you get rid of them, are you trying to get rid of the horror of the event too? So that's my thought.
Yeah, the reason why the joke works is because the event that's being referenced is just so horrific, obviously. And in respect to the other question about why people want to blur these lines, I'll just say that there's no sound that tyrants despise more than the sound of laughter. Brian, your thoughts?
Well, Alison pretty much said what I was thinking. You know, everyone was really grateful that it just came down to an £800 fine. And Dankula could have, and this is the part that is really, really ridiculous. He could have served, I believe it was up to a year in prison for this. And the idea that this even exists as a possibility, it's just like Alison said, it's a victory, kind of, but it's a cautious one, I guess. But really, the fact that these laws even exist and that, someone could, in fact, be in this position to begin with is actually something that should be cause of a lot of concern. Plus, isn't it kind of stupid that the end result was he had to pay an £800 fine, considering how much money the government of Scotland or the court system paid to actually conduct this case over 2 years, and judges and lawyers and staff and bailiffs and space and everything else. Considering how much was spent on this whole thing, it's like they lost more than they got. And I don't think they taught anybody anything. I mean, Dankula got that money in super chats, like when he did his final live stream before going to receive his sentence. So you didn't penalize anyone. It just looks really ridiculous. And this needs to be. Look, in the United States, we have freedom of speech, at least right now. I think it's a fragile thing that we're in danger of losing all the time. But I think it's time for other, governments to really look at if they don't have freedom of speech, if they have laws like this, they really need to look at what they're doing, because this is not, I think this is just a bad idea. It's just dumb. Like, they spent more money than they're getting. It's retarded. And no one's learned anything except maybe, members of the Scottish citizenry are going to look at that and say, why did we, what was the point of all this?
The point is to chill public expression. Like, the point is to make people think twice before they have these jokes, or think twice about everything. It's a way of just intimidating people.
Yeah.
Brian, and I mean the whole process itself became the intimidation. They chickened out in the end. I think the judiciary chickened out in actually really hitting him, because they knew that it would cause a monumental outrage. And so they at the end, and I think that that's probably due to all of the support that he's received on the internet from everyone paying attention to this, everyone making sure that this stays in the public eye. So the judiciary knew that there was pressure on them. So they knew that if they had thrown the book at him, there would have been public outrage.
Sure. But there was already outrage from the fact that he even got arrested, that even became, before he was convicted. I think people were seeing that this is ridiculous and should never have happened. And then when he was convicted, it just ramped up. And then there were people who defended the fact that he was convicted, trying to say, well, he broke the law, or he shouldn't be an asshole, and maybe this wouldn't have happened. And that was just unbelievable a response. And so, they had to, I think, they couldn't go all the way through with it maybe in the way that they wanted, because it would have probably gone over the edge. But it was retarded to begin with.
Well, yeah, and it is retarded. This entire desire to silence people, to take away their ability to live with each other. I mean, the system that we're in, this is what it does. It creates conflict. Humor is a way of diffusing conflict and ensuring that it doesn't become violent. Why wouldn't they want to freeze out humor when they can use the conflicts between us to rule us? And I just wanted to point out that the fact that Dankula is not going to jail, I would say, is you can thank everybody on the internet and everybody in the real world and liberalists for marching and keeping this in the public eye. You can thank them for not letting this go, not letting this entire thing just sink into the memory hole, and keeping it present in front of everyone. I think that you can thank us all caring about Dankula for the fact that he's not going to jail. And what I want to say about all this is that if we continue to have a sense of humor about ourselves, maintain a sense of humor about our ethnicities, our races, whatever, maintain a sense of humor and continue to care about each other,
we can grind the bastards down.
And in respect to what you just said about the liberals and people keeping this issue in the public eye, even though this currently is a cautious victory and there's still a long road ahead, I'm optimistic because there has been such a grand effort by people that are passionate about free speech to make sure that we pressure our public institutions to make sure that this doesn't go further than it should have. Like you said, if he had the book thrown at him, this would have been a huge problem.
And that's what the internet community and the community of liberalists on the ground, that's what I think they prevented. Mm-hmm. Is that the judiciary initiated all of this thinking it could just sort of slip it through and nobody would notice, and it could start to just build up its war chest against people making these kind of jokes. That's what happens when you're trying to when you're trying to move the Overton window, get people used to the idea of losing their freedom of speech. You build up a war chest of convictions, and you just keep moving, try to keep it as quiet until the day when everybody no longer is so terrified that you just outright institute the authoritarian censorship that you want. And we prevented that. Mm-hmm. We forced this all out into the light. And Dankula...
Liberals aren't so cringe now.
Yeah, no kidding,
Dankula forced it all out into the light by not being silenced. And that is a victory. And I'm telling you, if we keep our sense of humor and we keep our compassion for each other and we care about each other, and we don't let the bastards separate us, then we will grind them down, not the reverse. Okay, I'm getting off my soapbox.
Well, I also want to say one other thing. Count Dankula, throughout this entire affair, with the threat of jail hanging over his head and everything else, I have never seen a guy maintain such a positive attitude.
I know.
And still be able to laugh at himself and everything that's going on, even the ludicrousness of his own situation. I have to say that is something that I try to practice in my own life, and I admire him greatly for being able to do that. To just, like, the guy's face is made for smiling. I'm telling you, just look at the pictures of him, and I got to tell you, it's inspiring to see that he was able to maintain a positive attitude through all of this stuff, because most people would have despaired and just let it just ruin them. Just the experience. And I can tell that as a result of that, this is not going to change his content. He's going to keep doing what he does. He's not going to stop. And it's only made him more popular and essentially more famous, you could say, this entire affair, where he's going to be making appearances. He's going to be doing interviews. Just watch. This is huge.
God bless the Streisand effect.
Yeah, and I think we should cover that Count Dankula totally pwning the media.
Oh, okay.
Brian,
God. Who wants to sort of give a description?
Alison, go ahead and summarize.
All right. So some media individual got in Dankula's face after the sentencing was handed down, and started grilling on him on how it's funny to say "gas the Jews," and Dankula was saying, well, it's the context. You have this adorable little pug, and the adorable little pug is responding to something absolutely horrible, and the humor is in the contrast between the two things. And the media guy was just not understanding it when Dankula was saying it was the context. The pug makes the joke because the pug is adorable. Gas the Jews is horrible. And of course the guy was he really wanted to get that soundbite, and that the horrible soundbite to hang Dankula. And finally, I guess Dankula had enough of it, and he essentially said to this reporter, "You've just broken the law because you said gas the Jews, and context doesn't matter." And then he just was like, mic drop, walk off.
Oh, it's such a beautiful clip. We gotta find a way to link it. Yeah,
or end it. Yeah, just put it in the end here.
Yeah, we'll put it in the end of the video so you guys could check it out. Anyways, we've gone over 15 minutes. We've covered all the points. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Listen, if you like this particular video, make sure you hit that like button. If you want to see more content like this from Honey Badger Radio, whether we're talking about issues involving free speech or otherwise, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I want to thank Alison and Brian for joining me on really short notice to talk about this issue. And until next time, to quote Mr. Dankula, don't let your memes be dreams.
Teaching a pug dog to raise its paw in a Nazi salute. You said gas was used 23 times. What's funny about that?
The context of it is the juxtaposition of having an adorable animal react to something vulgar. That was the entire point of the joke. Have you seen the video?
Do you accept you committed a crime?
Have you seen the video?
I have.
Right, again, so I explained the context in it, so why are you asking me again?
Well, the context is that you've been fined £800 for a crime that
you
committed.
We're talking about the context of the video.
And we had in court.
Yeah, can I just ask, why did
we had in court that you committed gross offence against a large community of people. 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust.
You just said the statement a couple of seconds ago. Why should I consider your context if you're not concerning mine?
You've broken the law. You regret breaking the law.
You just broke the law 2 seconds ago when you said the phrase. Remember, context matters, mate. You're going to pay the price.